Digital economy, what do we understand by it? Now, digital trends have been changing the business landscape for several years now. They've changed the boundaries of enterprises and responsibility of business leaders. But these trends are more than just about technological innovation. They spur innovation in business models, access to markets, knowledge, business networks. But I'm not the expert, these panelists are, and I'm going to throw the floor over to them. What is a digital economy? What do we understand by it? Because as I understand it, it's actually just shopping online. I think that's online. Is it more than that?
So, since I have the mic, I'll go ahead first. You're actually quite right. The digital economy is about shopping. You can largely do that. And the more you shop, the more money you make. So, yes. Okay. So what is the digital economy? Before we used to have this term internet economy, which still exists, of course. And that basically has to do with how the various businesses that exist in and around the internet, be it content providers or businesses that use the internet to deliver services, that whole sector is described as the internet economy. But as the internet has permeated basically everywhere, what's happened, of course, is that ICTs and the internet are now being used in various sectors, all sorts of sectors. Be it energy, be it logistics, be it agriculture, and so, telemedicine, education, and so on. So what the digital economy basically means is that we start using internet and ICTs in order to improve the other, let's say, more traditional industries. We bring about further productivity gains, we bring about efficiency, we find new ways of doing all things. And overall, what that, of course, what that does then is builds this, what I would like to call a much more robust and integrated economy, which the internet itself and ICT obviously helps to empower and power.
Okay, Wisit, I'm going to ask you the next question. It's related. We talked about an integrated economy, but this session is also about infrastructure and connectivity. So does it go beyond the physical infrastructure?
Yeah, before I answer that, can I supplement Raj a bit on the definition of digital economy? Actually, there's no kind of a commonly agreed definition of digital economy. It really depends on countries' agenda or objective. But two things that I'd like to say. Mostly, digital economy would increase productivity and saving costs. So those are the two key aspects of the digital economy. In some countries, the digital economy means more than that, meaning that they would like to make the digital industry as a main revenue for the country. But that depends on the strategy of the country and what are the strengths of your country. All right, so coming back to your question about the infrastructure. The infrastructure, actually, to my view, is not only the physical infrastructure. So basically, when countries would like to do the digital economy or e-government, three things that you need to keep in mind. Of course, there are so many things, but there are three things. First is the infrastructure. Second is the institutional and managerial reform. And third is the monitoring and evaluation. Those are the three things that you need to keep in mind. So then coming back to infrastructure, not only the physical infrastructure as I mentioned, but also the legal framework, and also the human capacity and all that. The infrastructure means something that would enable the digital economy. So in terms of the physical infrastructure, like fiber optics, the mobile communication, of course, broadband is one of the key agenda of many countries. Countries also need to look at the spectrum, how to manage the spectrum efficiently, and when you go into the details of the broadband plan, you face a lot of issues, right of way, infrastructure sharing. So that's why there are so many things that need to be done, and a lot of players in this area. Yeah.
Matthew, taking this sort of discussion forward to you on the digital economy, we just heard that it's not just about physical infrastructure, it's also about capacity building as well.
Yes, exactly. That's what I was thinking of, that we have the legal and regulatory frameworks, the physical infrastructure, these things have already been highlighted, but the human side, the skills and understanding of how to use these tools and having the use of this technology become second nature is really integral to having a digital economy. Without these kinds of skills in place, this social development and social capital, the physical infrastructure will not be productive.
Dr. Ismail, what do you understand by the digital economy, especially in the context of Pakistan? And there's a supplementary question here. Is it a priority in Pakistan?
Actually, if you supplement the answer that was given by Raj, again elaborated by Wisit also, I asked you this question in the break, so what comes to your mind when someone asks you what is digital economy and you said online shopping? Of course, I mean, I consider that to be like a direct way of digital economy, a direct way where you're actually buying something on the internet. Mobile money, for example, mobile banking can also be considered like that. But as all the speakers, all the panelists elaborated, it's much more than that. For example, if you want to have online shopping, so how do you feel secure enough? Secondly, do you have a credit card to buy something, or would it be cash on delivery? What are the policies in the country? Are there any platforms available? So these are also related questions that have to be addressed, and the government and all the people involved need to have the right policies and right approach. In some way, I would say yes, it is on the priority list of the government, at least the banking part of it, because there is this financial inclusion strategy, and there is a high-level council that is headed by the finance minister, where there are certain targets for the mobile banking point of view, but that is just one part of the digital economy. Now, elaborating more on the digital economy itself, I think this was a direct way of digital economy, but then there are so many indirect ways. For example, would you consider agriculture, e-agriculture to be part of the digital economy? I would, because I would see that the farmers are getting the best pricing through an e-agriculture application or through the information that is conveyed to them. Would you consider e-health to be part of the digital economy? I would, because that would reduce the cost of providing healthcare to all the citizens of Pakistan. And furthermore, in Pakistan, it is much more required. The health should be part of the overall ecosystem, because we don't have enough doctors, we don't have enough hospitals. Similar thing goes for education, and even other areas like online booking, smart metering. I mean, you can name it, and all of these areas, all of these things, they contribute in one way or the other to the digital economy, including the climate change and all. Furthermore, there is yet another way of indirect contribution, which comes through innovative applications. And we have examples of innovative applications from the past, like Facebook, for example. Do you think that is part of the digital economy? Now,
I should think so, because it's used in marketing.
Yeah, WhatsApp, for example, isn't part of digital economy. It is affecting the revenue of the operators, and it is facilitating the people communicate. Similarly, LinkedIn, similarly, Twitter. So these are all the other things, innovative kind of applications, which are indirectly contributing to the society, to the economy of any country. So in my opinion, all these things are part of the digital economy. We can define digital economy, as Wisit said, there is a certain set definition. But in my view, this should be a fluid definition, and we can include everything that directly, indirectly, or in whatever way contributes to the economy of the country.
Right. So, Rajnesh, my next question is, how does this region, the South Asia region, compare to the rest of the world in terms of developing a digital economy?
So, in the previous sessions, I think we already had some examples of some of the challenges Pakistan, being part of South Asia, has in terms of moving towards a digital economy. And, more or less throughout South Asia, I think you have similar stories. The couple of things that determine how ready one of these economies would be to be a digital economy, infrastructure is critical. But having, for example, internet or telecom infrastructure. But the other big problem in this region is electricity. Mm-hmm. If we don't have power, none of these machines will work. Okay. So a stable electrical system is very critical in order to enable the digital economy. And I think sometimes that's lost on a lot of people, that we start focusing on, okay, we need to have broadband here, we need to have this here and that website here and all that. But if you don't have power to run these things, it's not going to happen. So, and throughout South Asia, I think you see power is a critical issue. Then there is issues around literacy, I think, in particular digital literacy. As well, we have issues in large parts of South Asia where there's a large or vast rural-urban divide. Most of our population in South Asia actually lives in rural areas. And in rural areas, we all know that connectivity and access is not as good as it is in most of the urban centers. So then that becomes another challenge. Throughout South Asia, I think these are some of the commonalities that are, and of course there's differences too. We've got some countries in the region who are running optical fiber cable in order to build a backbone around the country, which of course will help enable all these other things. But there's multiple parts of the puzzle. It'd be nice to be able to focus on one part of the puzzle and say, okay, we can fix this. It's not going to happen. There's multiple variables, multiple things that need to be done. There's also government-related things that need to be looked at as well. So there's a lot of work to be done.
Wisit, what do you think are Pakistan's particular challenges compared to the rest of the region, as Rajesh pointed out?
I think this again is my view. I think Pakistan is very much driven by the private sector, meaning that the private sector is very strong, and that's why a lot of people see the potential of Pakistan. So, and this is similar to Thailand too. That private sector is very strong. So there are a lot of things that the country should do and have to do. In terms of the digital economy, this is if you ask what does it mean? So another
answer from me would be rethinking. This is the paradigm shift. You need to rethink, you need to reform. So if you maintain or if you let things going on at current pace, sooner or later you will have something similar to digital economy. But you won't have a breakthrough. So you won't achieve the maximum benefit of the digital technologies. So I know that it's very difficult, and a lot of people don't like to hear this, but I think the country needs to reform everything. As I said, managerial, institutional reform, and people. This morning, I think somebody mentioned about the capacity, the training, human capacity building. This is something that Pakistan have to keep doing and doing more, especially in the public sector, in the government sector. I know that this is a very cliche. A lot of people say that, okay, human capacity building is very important, we are doing, but you have to be serious and doing it more. Another thing is policy is designed for the future. Digital economy is for the future generation. It's not for, no, I can't say it's not for us, but the potential is for the young generation. So another thing that you probably think about is, try to engage more young people. If you look at the audience in this room, how many people are below 30? So
Pakistan is primarily a young country, actually.
Yeah, but in terms of the, we have to build the next generation leaders. So we have to engage them now. People in the university, people, these are SME in startup, and Dr. Shah talking about the innovations. Digital economy is a new idea. So Alibaba, Jack Ma, when he started as a SME. And a lot of business models now is totally different. It's entirely different from the traditional models. Facebook, Google provide free services. Uber have no car at all, but they are, so they create a platform and then they generate a huge revenue. So I think people need to rethink and make things different.
Mm-hmm. Matthew, my question to you is, some of the challenges of Pakistan, but Pakistan also has an advantage, actually, because there are certain landlocked countries in Central Asia, Afghanistan, where Pakistan could perhaps provide a route for transit traffic. Could you explain that a little?
Sure, yeah, this is definitely an infrastructure concept that was discussed yesterday as well. The great positioning that Pakistan has to be able to serve as a transit gateway for countries in Central Asia to facilitate IP connectivity to Tier 1 providers and the submarine cables that are available. So I think that's definitely a clear opportunity that the country could have from a hardware perspective to build up that information transmission capacity.
Why hasn't it happened yet?
Well, there are a series of obstacles. One of the points that the United Nations is trying to focus on is making it easier from a legal perspective to launch these projects, rights of way, getting passage for these cables. We've mentioned previously the Asian Information Superhighway and using the intergovernmental agreements that are already in place through UNESCAP for running highways to also co-locate fiber. So we would be looking for, in the coming year, the member countries to be amending the Asian Highway Agreement to facilitate using those paths to route fiber optics. Pakistan has been providing a lot of support to this in our working group, and we hope that that language will go before the member countries for a vote in 2016.
Dr. Ismail, because this session is a lot about infrastructure and connectivity, we've had the 3G, 4G license auctions last year, but people still complain about connectivity issues in Pakistan, and that could be, you know, as Rajesh pointed out, it's a hurdle, it's an obstacle. Could you sort of elaborate?
Yes, I mean, although we have made some progress during the last 1 year and 4 months, but I think still a lot needs to be done. As I mentioned yesterday, that auction of spectrum was long due, and that was just a first step, and it was, I believe, still a small step, but at least it was taken. That was the most important thing. We need to do a lot more. We have started doing things, and one of those is, if you look at our sector, we have more competition on the cellular side, but we have less competition on the landline. So we have issued out more licenses in the local loop. There are many companies who have now licenses, and they have started laying fiber to the home services in Karachi, and they are also planning to have it in other cities. Smaller companies who are now coming up with these services. So we need to do more on that. And that was also mentioned by Parvez Iftikhar Sahab. We, I think, are doing quite, reasonably well on the long haul fiber, but the fiber to the home and in the local loop, we don't have enough fiber. We need to have more of that. On the cellular side, we are actually looking into this RAN sharing, infrastructure sharing. And again, we conducted a session on that, on infrastructure sharing, and the recommendations, we are still waiting for that. Once we have that, then we will have a policy on that also, a regulation on that also. At the same time, spectrum is also a very important thing to have, because in the last mile, especially if you look at Pakistan, even on the regular voice telephony side, we had more coverage on the cellular side than compared to the landline. We hardly had 4 million lines before we started the cellular services. And with cellular, now the number of SIMs that have been issued is a little more than 120 million after the biometric re-verification. So the same way, we need to still provide more spectrum. Why do I say that it was a small step? Because we have just given out very little spectrum. You see, the whole game in wireless is about spectrum. Technology, of course, is there, but then you need to have spectrum in order to have higher data rates. The other day we were having a presentation on 5G. And again, that is all about having more spectrum. Spectrum in the range of 400 megahertz being used simultaneously. Now, if you look at Pakistan, we have operators offering 3G services on 5 megahertz. And then we have operators offering it on 10 megahertz. And similarly, LTE operators offering it on 5 megahertz, one operator offering it on 10 megahertz. This is still the beginning. To a common person, it seems like, okay, now we have 3G and 4G and we are done. No, we are not done. We have just started these services, the basic services. And there is a lot to be done now, and we need to improve on that, have more spectrum allocated, identified, and then allocated, especially in the lower frequency range, because that is the spectrum for the rural areas where we need to take the services. So we have started that also. So there are many things that we are doing in the background. We are not making it public because we think that these are just something that we have to do anyway. This is our job. We cannot issue a press release every day that we have done this small thing and that small thing. But we are on it. We are trying our best. And hopefully when you come next year, you will see a much better situation.
Thank you. So I've been going one by one. Now I'm going to sort of open this next question to any one of you who wants to answer. Digital literacy. Obviously, the literacy rates in Pakistan are not very high. How do you build capacity in a situation like this? Apparently is a difficult question to answer.
So we're back to the sequence again. Yes, it is a difficult question to answer, and I won't profess to have all the answers. However, what I will say is this. And you actually said digital literacy, not literacy, so there's a...
Yeah. Differentiate.
So in terms of digital literacy, I think the thing is, I think we all realize that ICTs and internet, if our generation of tomorrow don't know how to use that, they will not get very far as the world progresses and develops and evolves. So looking at getting digital literacy in place, like we have our literacy programs, which still needs a lot of work, obviously, throughout the region. But we need to ensure that the digital part of the literacy starts right at the beginning. So it's not at colleges, it's not at high school, it's not at primary school, but right at the beginning of primary school. That's where it needs to start. If you look at some of the more developed and advanced countries, that's what they're doing. Where I live, Australia, that's what we do. Kids from kindergarten start using computers. Okay. So by the time they become an adult, of course, it will be second nature to them. In fact, by the time they're probably 6 years old, it's second nature to them. But so I think that's where it needs to start. So that change has to come, and I'm not so sure our education syllabus in the region really acknowledges that fact. I think they acknowledge it, but they don't implement it. That education on digital things, ICTs and internet, has to start at year one, at least, in my opinion.
I mean, I've seen one NGO in Islamabad that was giving out tablets and apps to primary school children. And I know that there are other examples in Africa and India as well. So any other examples of building capacity that you could sort of elaborate on?
I think ITU has some programs.
I'm sure that most every organization has this kind of a program which promote digital literacy. But I agree with Raj. I mean, it has to start in the beginning. It has to be, embedded in the curriculum. Since the first grade or even younger than that, and also not only teaching computer, how to use computer and IT and all that, but also this is something that we need to think seriously. People should know how to code it. So how to develop applications and all that. Since very young, and Obama said that. He said, don't just use the mobile app, but code it. Don't use it, but code it. So I think this is something that we need to take it seriously. Thailand is number one and number two of Facebook user, but I'm not very proud of it because we just use the technologies, but we don't invent it. And also. Educated young people, it would be easier than the adults because they are very quick to adapt and to learn. But in terms of people now that you mentioned like a program of giving a laptop and tablet and things like that. Some programs are effective, but some are not. So the idea is that are they really willing to use it? So they have the devices, they have the technologies, but sometimes they don't have the motivation to use it. And there could be a combination of government measures that could promote it. So for example, if some public services are created and set out the deadline that everyone have to use this e-services by that which date. Otherwise, you can't get this kind of services. So that is a little bit difficult or hard measures, but that is something that would force people to use the technologies.
I'm going to move on to Dr. Ismail because I want to open the floor to the audience as well. What is the future for Pakistan? How does Pakistan move towards a digital economy?
Okay, before I answer that question, let me ask the audience a few questions. So do you think all of you, how many of you, don't raise your hands, but how many of you would think that they are digital literate? Okay, just keep it to yourself. Then how many of you have actually done some kind of online transaction, financial transaction? Probably a smaller number?
Same here.
Okay, because we usually use the internet for browsing, for emails, and for social media, and maybe for entertainment. But have we used it for like any financial activity, any activity that involves some kind of economics, purchase of something, or any of the auxiliary services that I mentioned, health-related services, or M-learning, or e-learning services, or e-agriculture? So why we have not done it? Maybe we either didn't feel the need, or we are still with the old school of mind. So the people who are even digitally literate, and when I asked the first question, I think I'm sure that about 95% people would have said that they are digitally literate, but then they are not probably using those services that we are talking about ourselves. By the way, I have used e-learning at least. But anyway, so we are still, as one of the, I think it was Obaid, he mentioned that we are still probably, most of us are digital immigrants, maybe. Maybe that is the reason, and Wisit alluded to that also. The other thing is it has to bring in some value. For example, when I started using the online banking, I realized the value. I don't have to go to the bank. I can just do a transaction there. I got this credit card because when I came from abroad, I just wanted to have a credit card because otherwise it was very difficult for me to do different things. Initially, it was difficult to use the credit card in Pakistan, but now you can. So you see, we are also coming from we have to see what value it offers. So whenever you have a digital service, we have to see that it has to offer a value. So now I can answer the question. Yes, I see a future because we don't have a choice. If we want to progress, we have to move into this direction. But before we do that, we need to have the right, it has to make a difference in your life in order for you to use it. I can give you the example of my father. Also, he's not using it for digital economy, but at least going to the internet. I asked him so many times. I bought him a cell phone and he wouldn't use it. Finally, he just started at least carrying it. Then internet he wouldn't use at all. He said, no, I don't even like the keyboards. I won't use it. But last year he suddenly started using it because my sister bought him an iPad, and she told him that you can actually, and he was in the US, he was visiting her, that you can watch all the Pakistani news papers on this iPad, and he just got hooked to that, and from that date, he's 74 years old, he's just using the iPad. It's like, always with him, even when he travels, he say, where is my iPad? So it has to have some value for it, and it depends on different people. For a farmer, you have to see that this is the value it is bringing to you. For a student, you have to tell him that this is the value. And similarly, in all these other areas, that this is the thing that it can bring the value. One of the value not exactly related to digital economy is I also realized when we had an earthquake about 3-4 weeks ago, all the voice network was choked, but the data networks were working, and we were able to communicate with family and friends using the data network.
And you could also check whether everybody was safe on
Yes.
Facebook, because
So I think we need to, and in this respect, as I mentioned yesterday, we have so many, our strength is our young generation, and they need to come up with these newer application, newer products that can be used online. And I think this was Wisit who mentioned that in Pakistan, mainly the progress is coming from the private sector. The government sector can stop it by using policies and difficult regulation, or it can make it easier by having friendly regulations, by becoming partner with the industry, and similarly the government policies.
Thank you. So robust private sector, government not so quite ready yet. Let me just open the floor to questions for our esteemed panelists, please.
Thank you very much. Dr. Shah, my question is basically targeted at you. It was very heartening to see that you mentioned both e-agriculture and e-health twice during the last 30 minutes. I would also want to know from you, do you have a roadmap how these developments can actually go to the next level, and what kind of reform or changes are required from the public sector, from regulators, from PTA? So how can this dream actually be converted into a reality?
That's why I don't want to be on the panels, because first of all, I get tough questions, and secondly, all the questions, because they think that they are in Pakistan and I can resolve all the problems, they are addressed to me. I would like to hear more from our international speakers. But just to give you a short answer, yes, we definitely see our role. If you are asking about a roadmap, I would say that we have a rolling roadmap, and the reason for the rolling roadmap is that we are actually every day, not every day, but every month, I would say at least, I am actually discovering a new application, a new company coming up. And what we are doing at our end is that at PTA, we have this ability to provide a platform where they can present their application, their product to all the interested parties, and we are good in gathering those interested parties also. As you can see from here with ISOC, we have been able to gather people. So usually this is what we are trying to do. Whenever we have an interesting application, and I mentioned, and I think she is also here, Dere, one of the, yeah, she is also here from ITU, and then we, the Seed Alliance award that was given in IGF, Shumaila is also here. She worked on an e-health project. So I introduced, and she had other colleague also who had another e-health project. And I introduced at I was at IGF, I introduced them to so many people there also. And my intention, our intention at PTA is that we'll provide a platform for anyone who has anything that they believe is innovative and they want to show it to other people. And I believe Hassan should be here somewhere also. He also has some innovative, and we would be pleased to introduce them to the right partners, at least the partner that they think are the right partners, which usually are in the private sectors, either the telcos or other private entities.
Question. Thank you. So the OECD, one of the few organizations that actually tries to measure the digital economy and tries to define it, talks about investment, which a lot of you talked about yesterday and today, especially in infrastructure. They talk about skill, which you all touched on. They talk about social goals, where all the things like inclusiveness, environment, health, education, job creation, all of that stuff comes in. The fourth thing they talk about is the softer side of things, privacy, security, and consumer protection, which none of you have touched on. So the OECD thinks this is important. Do you think so? I'm guessing most of you are going to say yes. What exactly do we need to do in this area? So I need an answer beyond just saying yes, of course it's important, something specific.
Well, I'll start off with that one. Cyber legislation is a very key enabling factor that needs to be put in place. There's been quite a bit of work done on this topic. For example, there are model legislations available for synchronizing with other jurisdictions such as the EU and so forth that could be drawn upon for inspiration. Having those laws in place to ensure safe e-transactions and that there's capacity building and understanding on the side of law enforcement and the judiciary to have safe legal institutions backing those policies and laws up. A very critical key part of being able to promote the digital economy. Without a modern legislative approach, it's really inviting cybercrime and cybersecurity risks.
At this point, could I just ask a question as well? You know, Pakistan has faced a bit of controversy. There's been in Pakistan relating to the electronic crime bill. Dr. Ismail, if you could, I know you're kind of representing the government of Pakistan at this moment.
I tried.
We are actually not exactly the government. We are in between the government and the private sector. Although the authority members, the Pakistan Telecom Authority members are classified as public servants as opposed to civil servants. So that's the clarification. It says still in the, I think, yesterday the advisor to the Prime Minister was here, and he said that it's going to be presented to the National Assembly. So there's still going to be a debate on that. And you can have your views heard by contacting the National Assembly members. I mean, at least when the discussions that I was part of, some of the things that are being mentioned as, for example, the emails, unsolicited emails, at least I can tell you that the objective was not like the one which some people have been mentioning. That may be a consequence of that. That needs to be maybe come up in that debate that would be held in the National Assembly, and then it will be sent to the Senate. So it's still quite some steps to take in that.
Any other questions?
I got a question. I'm just curious in terms of infrastructure and the comment earlier about bandwidth. Is the TV white space being made available in Pakistan yet, or is that something that is in the long-term planning perspective? Just curious.
Yeah, okay. Last month we had a discussion with Microsoft. Their delegation was here. TV white spaces basically is the space that is there between channels that are not being used, or even the guard bands that are being used by the public broadcast television. So the idea is to use whatever is not being used in those channels or the guard band to provide either the last mile connectivity or even the backhaul connectivity. So the idea seems very, I mean, it's a good idea, but we have to discuss it at a certain level. Of course, with the first step is the trial. So we are actually working on that, evaluating that where and how the trial should be conducted. I'm aware that in Singapore, I think it's being used as a backhaul to the public Wi-Fi in one of the parks. And then there are projects in Kenya and other places. The bottom line is that you need to provide broadband, and to resolve some of the issues. If you look at the band, it is a very good band from the propagation point of view. So it can even be used as a last mile access, but then you have to have the devices and the support for that band. So yes, definitely we are in the process of evaluating it. Once we have the evaluation for the trial, once the trial is done, then we'll go forward on that. But as you know, there are so many different organizations who, for example, the broadcaster would not like to give up or not even like anyone to use any spectrum that has been allocated to it. But let me tell you that the future is that spectrum would probably not be used in the fashion it is being used now. There would not be a permanent allocation. Or even if there is a permanent allocation, if you are not using it, other people would be allowed to use it. And that's where the concept of cognitive radio will come into play. And that is, I believe, the future of the spectrum usage. This is the first step, which is kind of a manual, not exactly manual, but semi-automatic shift of spectrum. But that will be completely autonomous. Wherever you find the free spectrum, you'll just use it.
Well, I have a question for Matthew at this point, actually. South Asia, in terms of being connected, in terms of business and trade, is probably other economic blocks, is probably not very well connected. Do you think sort of the digital economy aspect could help improve it, or are the politics too difficult to negotiate?
Well, I think we're in the political business, so that's what we want to help negotiate. As an intergovernmental agency, UNESCAP is really trying to focus on working on some of those obstacles. I think there are concerns, but also cause for a very hopeful outlook. We do see some comparator cases, such as ASEAN, for example, that's doing quite well in overcoming some of these points and integrating more closely together. UNESCAP has identified some key missing links in bilateral and multinational connectivity in this area that, if addressed, would go a long way to providing the enabling environment for that kind of digital economy. So I think it can look quite daunting, but there are also reasons to be hopeful, some success cases, and the efforts that are being put forward to bring operators and governments together nationally and regionally, I think are cause for hope for forward momentum on these points.
Mm-hmm. Could you give a few more specific examples of what gives you hope in this particular case?
Sure. Well, specifically, we've had the mandate from the last United Nations UNESCAP Regional Commission last year to launch the Asian Information Superhighway Initiative. There's some very concrete international agreements there that we've spoken of earlier today. So I think from the political level, with the governments that are engaging on this topic, it's clear that movement is occurring. There's strong backing from a variety of countries at different levels of development throughout the region to really come together on this. It's definitely in the initial stages. We've just taken our first round of meetings in September, and there's a lot more work to do. So I don't want to sound like it's all glitter and and rainbows or something like this. There's a long road ahead, of course, but there's a growing momentum and consensus from the political side to recognize that this is something that needs action and move forward and fund it and engage.
Obviously, at the international level, there needs to be legislation, but would there need to be legislation at the national levels as well?
Well, I think there's been a really good discourse over the last 2 days on areas where Pakistan and surrounding countries can enhance their efforts with regard to policies. We've talked about cyber legislation, the need for national policies, policies that can stimulate growth. So there is quite a bit of work to do. And I think that we've heard some really good suggestions. I've been very heartened by the number of you who have come and spoken with me bilaterally in the hallways, from carriers and regulators and people in this room who really want to work together to move something forward, and the ideas and suggestions that have been advanced to me for sort of coalescing that into firm action. I've been really enthusiastic to see. I've got a pocket full of business cards here that I need to start sending emails out on. So I think even just within this room and coming from this meeting, there's a lot of interest and desire to move forward.
Mm-hmm. The government, we talked a lot about this in Pakistan, and this is again a question for all of you, anybody who would like to answer. What should the government do in Pakistan? There is a very strong private sector. What does the government need to do? How do we delineate or demarcate the roles in terms of promoting a digital economy?
Well, since I've got the microphone, I would like to see the government of Pakistan put forward the amendment to the Asian Highways Agreement to facilitate the use of those resources for enhancing fiber optic connectivity. It's a very concrete step that could be taken, and we would hope that we would have strong backing for that change. That would be on the physical infrastructure side. Well, I think there's been a really good discourse over the last 2 days on areas where Pakistan and surrounding countries can enhance their efforts with regard to policies. We've talked about cyber legislation, the need for national policies, policies that can stimulate growth. So there is quite a bit of work to do. And I think that we've heard some really good suggestions. I've been very heartened by the number of you who have come and spoken with me bilaterally in the hallways, from carriers and regulators and people in this room who really want to work together to move something forward, and the ideas and suggestions that have been advanced to me for sort of coalescing that into firm action. I've been really enthusiastic to see. I've got a pocket full of business cards here that I need to start sending emails out on. So I think even just within this room and coming from this meeting, there's a lot of interest and desire to move forward.
Mm-hmm. The government, we talked a lot about this in Pakistan, and this is again a question for all of you, anybody who would like to answer. What should the government do in Pakistan? There is a very strong private sector. What does the government need to do? How do we delineate or demarcate the roles in terms of promoting a digital economy?
Well, since I've got the microphone, I would like to see the government of Pakistan put forward the amendment to the Asian Highways Agreement to facilitate the use of those resources for enhancing fiber optic connectivity. It's a very concrete step that could be taken, and we would hope that we would have strong backing for that change. That would be on the physical infrastructure side.
Anybody else?
I think there's something that the government needs to do, and they should have done already by now. I think, one important thing is they need to be clear or have a kind of clear direction or the certain plan or policy put in place. It doesn't need to be a perfect plan, but at least give confidence to the private sector or to people that this is what the government is looking forward to doing it or to achieve it. So I think it's difficult to clear what exactly the government would like to see in the future. Yeah.
So just to sort of add a little bit to what Wisit said, and I think we had this yesterday in one of the sessions as well. In conversations I've been having this past week here in Pakistan, it's become very obvious that, you know, in any investment environment, you need stability. Okay, if you keep on shifting the goalposts as the match is being played, you'll never score a goal. And I think that's happened in the past here. So, and your specific question was about the private sector, how they can be involved in this process. And that's where I see the problem is, because if the private sector does not have confidence in the stability of whatever plans and processes are in place, or whatever, you know, there's issues with taxation as well here. If there's uncertainty in that, I think the confidence in the private sector goes down, and therefore they don't invest any further. They don't want to do things. They'll just wait for a while and see what happens, and then they'll make a decision. And that waiting and seeing what happens, this just keeps on going on and on. So I think, you know, some long-term visionary stability, I think, for this country would do it magic.
Thank you. Any other questions? Or should I move on with my own? Oh, great.
While talking about the digital economy, I think I would like to know about your ideas, how other countries are working on these things, like they make agreements with Alipay, PayPal, and other services like these things. So how can Pakistani government can work on this thing to resolve, to make it available to Pakistani people also?
So I can have a go with that, and then I think others may have a better answer than me. But, you know, just on payment, so this is one of my pet things about payment gateways and whatnot. You know, for the digital economy to survive and flourish, you know, it cannot exist without a robust and appropriate payment system in place. And the payment system, I'm not just talking about the big banks where you can send millions of rupees here and there. What we're also talking about is the micro payments that need to happen, that need to take place. Your mobile money thing is an example of that. But that has to extend far out just beyond the mobile device and the things that are available on that mobile device. So, you know, having these payment solution providers, you know, having the ability to have them set up, and yes, there's all these big names overseas, but that doesn't stop the locals from also developing that, as long as the government has in place policies and regulations which allow that to happen. Of course, if you want to compete on the global stage, you need to be able to have cross-border transactions, right? So that's where you need to ensure that your financial systems here are in tune with the systems overseas. There's technical issues, there's standardization issues, and there's the simple agreement issues which need to be in place to ensure that if I want to sell this bottle of water to someone in Africa, that one, I can ship this thing out, and two, they can pay me for it, and I receive the money. And it's not very often that we have all those things in place. Most of it is, but just like you said, my friend, that, you know, not allowing some of these things that the rest of the world is using, you know, intensively now. I mean, I'll give you my own personal example. Nearly every week I have a PayPal transaction of some sort, because it's not because I want to do it, because it's the most convenient way to do it in some circumstances. In other times, I of course choose a credit card or pay cash or whatever it is, but I'm seeing generally once a week I do some sort of PayPal transaction these days. If you had asked me that 2 years ago, I never used PayPal. But it's just the convenience of it. And it's the micro payments that I usually make. It's $10, it's $15, it's $43, you know, something like that. I don't do big transactions. So I think that's one thing that's missing from this. So, and we start talking about startup environments and having the startup ecosystem in this country, you know, developing content, selling things online. If you don't have an appropriate payment system and micro payment system in place, these businesses, these SMEs, these startups will have a tough time competing, not just within Pakistan, but if they want to go outside of Pakistan, right? Because you should not just limit yourself to what you can do here. Of course, the market here is big enough, but look what opportunities are outside. So there's a lot of work that I think has to be done, and that really has to be a push from the government side, really, you know, the appropriate agencies in there. And there's silence.
Any other questions from the floor? Okay, so I'll just move on to mine. Now, a digital economy is actually an advantage, or something that in developing countries, a digital economy can actually quickly improve the economy of a country, as I understand it. Yes?
it can enable all parts. It makes everything more efficient, more productive. You know, it provides a much more integrated way of doing things. So yes, in short, yes.
But do you think it is a priority to ensure that this ecosystem is in place in a country like Pakistan?
So there, I mean, you know, and I'll go back to my sorry, I'm just hogging the microphone here, but I will not speak after this. The promise, well, maybe not. The thing is, you know, I talked about that payment system, right? So if you want to sell stuff overseas, if you don't have the systems in place, you can't really have a good way to transact. I mean, as an example, Naveed, who works with me, you know, getting him paid in Pakistan was a problem for us, right? Because he's based here. Our systems are in the US. Our legal entities in Singapore. I sit in Singapore. I approve that it goes to the US, the money comes through. Then it took us a while to figure out how do we send him the money. Do we send it from the US or do we send it from Singapore? And in both instances, we had issues. So we had to find a workaround.
So in other words, Pakistan is not fully connected to the international financial systems.
It is, but not in the way it should be. I think it can do much better. But to actually answer your question about the digital economy, what I'm trying to say is that if Pakistan does not do all these things that need to be done to have a digital economy, you cannot be an economy in isolation now. We talk about globalization, we talk about regionalization. Right? If the others around you and across the world from you have advanced and put in systems in places which will make them compete better on the global scale, be it exporting textiles, be it exporting leather, which are two things which, of course, are very famous out of Pakistan. This is a Pakistani shirt, by the way. The thing is that you know, you need to be able to compete globally. It's no longer about what you can do for the local market. And the digital economy in Pakistan would really push that forward. It would enable all parts of the economy to make it happen. And now we'll stop.
So I'm just, it's a supplementary question to this. No, not for Rajnesh. Anybody who, I mean, I just like to open it. I mean, if I could name names if you want me to. But, so the priority ought to be the global market, not the local market. Is that it?
Okay, so I didn't want to speak, but as I said, not necessarily. Okay, you have a large market which needs to be served as well. Mm-hmm. But if you want to look at, you know, how do you earn foreign exchange? When you sell stuff overseas and money comes into the country. So if you want more foreign exchange to come in, apart from the remittances, of course, which is also big in Pakistan with your diaspora overseas, you need to have. I've lost my school of thought. Sorry. I'll stop.
I think where you wanted to go with that was the junction between having the national digital economy and the global integration, because we can't have a digital economy in Pakistan in isolation. We have to acknowledge that with ICT comes this increased level of globalization and broader markets, more access, more reach, more opportunity, but you're also competing more globally. You're not competing with the person in the next city, you're competing with the person 3 countries over. So that kind of a global view is necessary for charting out how the digital economy would develop.
So I know that this question came up in the last session as well, and I'm just going to sort of, I'd like it to be fully fleshed out perhaps. I mean, the subject has been sustainable development. I'm a journalist, I'm very suspicious of lingo. Please explain.
Well, I think we've recently had the Sustainable Development Goals adopted by the General Assembly, by all of the nations in the UN process, and there are a lot of different aspects to that. Some of the more neglected themes are things like reducing inequality, empowerment of women, things like this. So, those are aspects that we would really want to highlight. But I think a better way to kind of summarize the concept is sustainable development doesn't inherently mean you're continuing to do the same thing you're doing today as you go forward in time. It means you're able to continue developing as time goes on. So what you look like can change. It will have to change. You can't stay with, economies evolve, new skills are necessary. We used the phrase creative destruction earlier. Some industries rise and fall. So it's very much more of a sustainable, constant adaptation to emerging challenges, being nimble, being innovative, and things like this, rather than taking an economic snapshot and figuring out how to progress that through the decades with as little change as possible. That's not the goal there. To have sustainable development, we need to be able to evolve and change and be using our resources and talents wisely to be able to move forward.
So could we get an example? I mean, that is the concept, but an example of something like this.
Sure. When we look at economic history, it's very common to start with an economy based on extractive industries, either lumber or oil or natural resources, moving into low-value labor production, things that require a lot of human attention to produce, through skills and service delivery and knowledge economy and digital economy. So these are very different jobs, very different economic profiles and what's being produced. When we see economies that we consider advanced economies, the percentage where people are spending their time and how they're adding value is very, very different. So when we talk about sustainable development, we're not talking about keeping countries that are doing extractive economic activity continuing to extract forever. We want to progress that into these different tiers of economic performance. And that's really where investment in education and issues like this come in.
There's a question from there, the mic.
So I partly agree with Matthew, but I think there's a lot missing, right? If you look at the definitions of what is sustainable growth, the most sort of general consensus, other than the goals, which are very specific implementations of it, but the general consensus is that it is about economic growth. So in that sense, I agree, you keep growing, maybe doing different things or doing the same thing, but it has to be environmentally sound in the manner that we don't destroy the environment, very broadly defined, now in return for future generations not having access to it. So economic growth, environmental sustainability, and social inclusiveness. This is the biggest thing about sustainable development goals. It's fundamentally different from the standard macroeconomic models of economic development, which we've had, which is purely growth focused and not about inclusiveness, right? So the digital economy clearly has potential to contribute to economic growth. The literature is very clear on that. At a macro level and micro level across countries, that's strong, right? You can grow your GDP if you get all these other stuff right. It's a whole lot less clear on whether it can be economically sustainable because there haven't been systematic studies done. People look at e-waste, for example, which is clearly problematic. But on the other hand, because people are traveling less and therefore emitting less carbon into the environment, there might be a net positive. We don't know. On the third thing, on socially inclusive, the evidence is really unclear because we might be creating a new digital superclass, that is the elite who are connected and getting more and more of the value and share of the pie in the digital economy and leaving other people behind. And that is not sustainable if most of your population are the youth and they are not reaping the benefits. How do we get to all three? And not just for Matthew.
Who can I pass the microphone to? Right, well, these are absolutely important points. I very much agree. I mean, as an example of that, there's a quite solid body of evidence that in some economies, as the use of ICT grows, when we look at labor market impact, that it has kind of a U-shaped effect on jobs, that it actually hollows out the middle class and creates more job opportunities on extreme ends of the spectrum, which is something that you'd really want to know about and prepare for in growing an economy. So this is definitely true, this issue of how do we move forward with the digital economy in an inclusive way. There's been some very interesting research from South America, and I think the point is pretty intuitive, that ICTs are an exponentiating factor. If you're already well-resourced and empowered, adding ICTs onto that it widens the distance between you and marginalized sectors of society. So this is one of the 4 pillars of the Information Superhighway Initiative is the universal access. And we've heard some of the experiences that Pakistan is having in using its Universal Service Fund. I think this is very much something that some experimentation needs to be brought to bear with, because there are really unanswered questions and national contexts are so different. It can be a very tricky subject. But I think the broad acknowledgement that needs to be equalized, and that there's an understanding that without effort it will be a destabilizing factor is very much embedded in the Sustainable Development Goals, with the emphasis on reducing inequality. So it's a very tricky subject. Maybe try to reduce sustainable development to like bumper stickers level sayings. You end up dropping so much it can become quite complicated. But yeah, ICTs exponentiate what you have. And moving forward with the digital economy, the risk is that without focus on equality and developing social capital, things can actually be made worse for marginalized members of the economy and society.
Right. So the last session was about e-governance. And one of the things that I was thinking about while I was listening to it, which was very informative, was bureaucracies tend to be bloated. Yes, and also whenever there's a new trend, for instance, when manufacturing and all of that started, people feared losing jobs. Is that a real fear with e-governance as well? That it could reduce jobs, that it would be more efficient, middle tiers would be removed.
I'll rescue the UN. Since you rescued me before, so. Look, I think the answer to that question is you have to first ask yourself, how inefficient is the government? How easy is to get something done with the government? Does it have to pass through 15 different tables and 14 different files and maybe 6 different people before you can get...
Those people also have employment.
Yes, they have employment, true. So the question is, are you there to just employ people, or are you there to provide a service to the public? A government's role is to serve its citizens, right? So in terms of e-government, yes, look, there's no point saying that, let's be upfront. Yes, some people will lose their jobs because the process will become far more efficient. But at the same time, new jobs may be created in other arenas, which may offset the losses that were in this bloated bureaucracy, as it may be. So, and I think the other thing is that historically, as governments have, grown over the years, many things come into play. Job security, due to political reasons, becomes quite important. So, what happens then is that the bloat keeps on getting bloatier and bloatier and bloatier. With new technologies, I think Harish has just stepped out, but Harish gave the great example about the visa process when he tried to get a visa to come to Pakistan. And he had to go to a site, download a PDF, print it out, fill it out. It was 6 pages long, send it, take it to the embassy. I'm sure someone in the embassy then took that form, typed everything out again into a system somewhere, and then it was processed. Or maybe then it went into a file. Now, so that's inefficiency in the process. And there's a solution in e-government to do that. You have an online form the person fills, so that another person sitting in that embassy doesn't have to refill that form all over again, and maybe introduce a mistake, or maybe correct one, who knows. So, so little things like this, I think, make a big difference. And yes, people will lose their jobs, but new jobs will also come out of it. Maybe higher paying jobs will come out of it. Maybe new industries could evolve out of it. So, I think that there's a bit of both there. It's not just, we shouldn't just be scared that there'll be job losses, that we should stop doing this. Paradigm shifts. Yeah.
Right. I have a question for Dr. Ismail. He's been quiet for a while now. We talked about the future and 3G and 4G and all of that. Has that reflected in the Pakistani economy, the subscriptions and the connectivity?
Okay, before I answer that, you talked about the bureaucracy and e-government. To many people, actually, e-government, in the bureaucracy in the government, they think of e-government as just e-office. They think that, or maybe even at a lower level, having a computer on their table. But So that's the stage we were at least some time ago. And even before that, they were even asking for a computer operator, so that that computer which is sitting on their desk could be operated. Now they are operating it themselves. To some extent, the e-office they have started implementing that. But the true e-government is, I mean, first of all, there are so many things that has to be done, but it basically is, as I will agree with the earlier panelist, that we need to provide citizen G2C services, government to citizen services based on that, like having a birth certificate issued, a police certificate, domicile, and you name it, for which you have to go to many different offices and get the signatures and all. Now, as far as the impact of all these broadband technologies is concerned, first of all, we have not done a specific study on Pakistan, which we plan to do, but there is a general worldwide trend that there is 0.3 to 1.5% increment in the GDP of a country for 10% increase in the broadband, which we are about to see, because we have under 2%. We are now, if you take the population of Pakistan to 390, we are approximately at 11.5%. So we can see that we are reaching that threshold, and we plan to conduct some studies on that. So that, but you have also to realize that there are so many different things that has to be considered. Like, I mean, for example, how did it contribute to the businesses in Pakistan? How many new businesses open up because of this? Or how many businesses were facilitated, and so many other things that have to be taken into account. So we need to do a proper study on that, which we plan to. But we are no different than maybe any other country of the world, so it has to be between these percentages. Because this year our main focus was on having these numbers achieved, and now the focus would be on what impact it has and what more could be done in order to enhance the impact on the economy.
So no studies yet in Pakistan, but there must be studies in other countries that have reflected, how it's impacted the economy. Wisit, I haven't heard from you for a while. I'm putting you on the spot now.
Okay, no problem, but can you repeat the question?
So the question that I asked was about how adopting these technologies, 3G, 4G in Pakistan was the example, and how it's reflected in the economy, but there's been no study in Pakistan. So I want to know, other countries, other studies, how has it reflected in the economy? Could you just kind of explain?
Okay, it's put this way. What I can say about the mobile technology, I mean, this 3G or 4G, in the context of Pakistan and also other developing countries, it's very important because in many developing countries, they don't have a good, fiber optics, a good, physical infrastructure, not like Japan or Korea, which have, nationwide coverage. So the most cost-effective solution is the wireless. So that's why the 3G or 4G is really important, really essential for, creating, for giving coverage in the country. Combining with the reason of the growth of the smartphone, of the mobile phone, so that would really even accelerate the kind of the growth of the wireless networks. So definitely it has an impact to digital economy because, as I said, the first thing, not the first, but one of the things that you need to look at is infrastructure. Without the access, how could people benefit from the, various services, right? So that infrastructure has to be put in place. And if I may just quickly address your earlier questions, so many questions early on, very quickly. One of your questions was asking about whether it's a priority for Pakistan to put the digital economy ecosystem. The digital economy is very broad. It's really broad. And the more you are looking at what needs to be done under the digital economy, the more things you see are relevant. And then what comes next is that you lose the focus. You confuse, or you be distracted by some certain aspect of the digital economy, and that is something that I think you have to think about. So whether it's a priority to put an ecosystem is difficult, So I think I would say that the priority should be you prioritize what has to be done. I mean, make the priority of what needs to be done, what kind of services need to be done, and even you focus on one single service, then this is what you are going to face, is that you will see that you will get stuck by many things. For example, if we are implementing e-health, I think there was a gentleman was asking about the e-health. So then you will face a problem of the data sharing of the patient records, and then you realize that okay, you need to change or amend the law, and then so on. You will face more and more problems. Even you are focusing on one single area, then there will be a lot of problems already. So putting the ecosystem would be difficult in the first place. So make a prioritization. That's my point. Yeah.
Yes, could we have a...
So it's not a question. You ask whether there's evidence, empirical evidence, in terms of economic impact of adopting 3G and 4G, not necessarily to 3G and 4G, and the macroeconomic figures that Dr. Shah has quoted is well known. Just recently in 2015, in fact, World Bank has published a study, and then we also quoted in our ISOC UNESCAP and ADB report, a firm level study, and which is significant because we're looking at economic impact at a macroeconomic level, and our premise of internet as a general purpose technology was once again proven in a sense that it was the small firms who would adopt internet, having higher impact in terms of productivity as well as growth when it comes to adopting internet, using websites, versus when it comes to fixed lines and just pure cellular use, they didn't see a statistically significant impact. So I think it goes to, we've been, those who've been working in ICT 4D for a while has been saying internet will help growth. There are some evidences. Of course, this is a study of, I believe, over 100 developing countries. So I would say this is a very robust result. At the same time, a country-level study is definitely necessary. Just wanted to add to that.
Thank you very much. I think there's another question or a comment from, yes, at the back over the...
While the microphone's traveling back there, I just want to amend the debate on this point with a little plug for human rights, that it's not just revenue and GDP growth that we care about, that we need to have ICTs in people's hands for a variety of other reasons that aren't directly linked to GDP.
Well, I have a question with the panelist. Helani and Yone have already rightly pointed out that literature and studies are very much clear about it, that whether it's a governance or economy, the ICT has a positive impact in both cases for after the digitization. And in case of Pakistan, if you see that the digitization in case of the governance and in case of the economy, in both sectors already bits and pieces that's available, and the people are using it to some extent already in Pakistan. For example, 2 weeks back I just visited a remote village in Pakistan, and there was an election in Pakistan. There is a local body elections going on, and I visited one assistant commissioner office who was dealing with the local bodies in a small city, and he was getting the instructions from their bosses who were sitting 40 miles away. And I asked him, how you ask it? It's only the mobile phone you ask? First you ask from the returning officer, then you tell the same thing to the DCO, and then the same thing to the DPO, but it takes long time because sometimes the phones are busy. And then he said, no, because we have a group on this WhatsApp, And we are communicating with each other on the, we are only 4 or 5 people, and whatever we want to communicate with each other, because we need the instructions immediately, so we just communicating with each other through the WhatsApp. So there is already bits, the digitization is available in the governance and in the economy. The question is how to digitize the economy, whether we need to prioritize some sectors for the government, because digitization cannot come at once. There are sources attached with it. Government or any private sector, there are the sources required. So the panelists may advise that economies like Pakistan, who are always short of the sources to allocate for such things. So whether we should go with big push simultaneously for all the sectors, or there are some sectors which should be digitized first, for example, the taxation, the planning, and in the case of the public service delivery. So this is my question to the panelists. Any priority in your mind? Thank you.
Okay, I will try. I'm not sure about I answer your question, but if the question is about a priority or prioritization of the sector. If you're talking about the government, I mean the domains, I mean the government sector, okay, to my view, I think one of the basic things that you should look at is a national ID. And because that is a very foundation of a lot of public services. That's a national ID in the public sector. But if you are talking about the industry, the private sector, I mean in the private sector, what particular industries should be digitized or something like that, I think this is something that the government or even the private sector need to assess. You have to know what are the strengths of your country, and then what would be the potential industry that should be promoted. For example, I don't know, maybe if a semiconductor or maybe it's a shipping industry or whatever, then focus on those sectors or those industries and digitize it and utilize the digital technologies. This is what many countries are doing. Because you can't copy other countries. You see that, okay, Vietnam now is very popular of manufacturing, the mobile phone and things like that. And then you just copy them. No, you need to look at your resources and prioritize it. So I'm not sure if I answered the question.
So just to add to what Wisit was saying, I mean, the other thing in terms of how do you prioritize something like this, I think first you look inwards. What does Pakistan produce? What earns you your export revenue? And that's where you start, because that'll make the biggest difference, right? It'll have the biggest impact. You got textile as one of them, right? See the shit, I took this from here. So, but the thing is that, you need to prioritize the industries you currently have, which will keep on growing and evolving and, brings you revenue. And then I think the next thing would be to look at what other supportive industries help enable that. For example, to grow textile, that means you need to grow cotton, as an example. Then you need to look at the agriculture side of things, land management, for example, land conservation, right? You could start with that. I don't know what the status of that is in Pakistan, so I'm speaking more generically here. So just look at the related things that make the textile industry work. Logistics and shipping would be another one. Customs clearance systems, for example, would be another. When things leave the country, financial payment systems, obviously, that's, so trying to ensure that all those systems work well, they integrate well, and they interoperate. So then, and then choose the next one that you want to work on. You're quite right. To do everything one hit will take a lot of resources, and no one has that. Not just Pakistan, no one has that. So prioritization is very important.
There's another question at the back.
For the record, this is Adil from Huawei. It's an open question, anybody who wishes to answer. So you know that e-commerce giants like Amazon and eBay, they don't deliver all of their products to Pakistan. Mr. Shah, you might not be the concerned person here, but do you know any initiatives that the government has taken in this regard? To be honest with you, my only concern here is if they can deliver their product to India, then why not Pakistan?
Dr. Shah, I think. Question was for Dr. Shah.
Actually, I met the representative of Amazon in Brazil, and they have their own priorities also. So they are currently looking at much bigger markets. I mean, if you look at India, they have about 6 times the population of Pakistan. So they are looking at certain markets like China and India. In total, I believe they are in 7 countries. This is what they told us, or where they are actually based. Countries where they have offices, and the expansion plan for them is the countries with bigger populations, much bigger than Pakistan at this stage. But they also assured us that when they will definitely keep Pakistan in their plans for delivery of services. They are providing 2 kinds of services, as you may know. One is the delivery of the merchandise that you order online. And the other is the cloud-based services. The cloud-based services can be accessed from anywhere. So that's where the status is. So I asked him, so we have to basically increase our population by 5 times to be on your radar. But I think there are other reasons also, maybe friendlier policies and other security situation and all, and the ease of delivery of the product. But basically the population was a big issue also, the market size.
There was a question, and we'll make that the last question.
It's a comment. Keeping in mind the sustainable development, I think for better e-governance, the focus should be on bottom-up approach. As Raj has mentioned, the more focus should be on SMEs. At grassroots level, we should encourage them to use e-commerce platforms. If they are doing cross-border import and export, they should have some privileges, they should have some access to do some transactions online. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, so that was a very enlightening discussion on moving towards a digital economy. We know that South Asia is plagued with problems of electricity, of literacy,